There are certain homes that exist primarily as a promise, the promise of security, routine, and a defined boundary against the chaos of the outside world. This facade of domestic stability is often the first layer of defense against scrutiny. The structural flaw, the willingness to trust the image over the emerging facts, reappeared in the much larger and more public deception involving the Blagg family in Grand Junction, Colorado. The initial psychological anomaly was the call made on a Tuesday morning in November 2001, where Michael Blagg reported finding the back door open and his wife, Jennifer, and daughter, Abby, gone. The story of a simple disappearance, though, was immediately contradicted by a single forensic finding in the master bedroom, triggering immediate professional curiosity about the mechanics of the event. The investigative focus was instantly triggered by the discovery of a large volume of Jennifer's blood under the flipped mattress, a concentrated pattern that spoke of immediate, profound trauma. The evidence of violence was restricted to a specific location, without any chaotic trail or smudge extending through the hallway or adjoining rooms. This environmental constraint resisted the immediate idea of a random intruder acting fast and sloppy. It suggested a focused, controlled event carried out by someone intimately familiar with the space and the occupants. The presence of drag marks on the carpet further indicated that a heavy object had been deliberately moved out of the room. The clean parameters of the scene provided a partial understanding. The crime was not impulsive, but contained and managed. The developing sense of partial understanding came through examining Michael's performance during the initial searches and media interviews, revealing an individual or institutional error in emotional display. While he spoke clearly and his demeanor mapped to community expectations of a concerned husband, investigators noted his grief felt managed and contained. He allowed searches and cooperated selectively, presenting the outward image of transparency. This outward composure, however, was later documented as an attempt to invite lenient judgment, a presentation that invited the community to substitute their desire for a good story for the evidence the physical scene was building. The fact that he was controlling the narrative was an immediate cognitive reward for observers who prefer order over chaos, a misdirection that allowed the true pattern of motive to remain hidden. The eventual reversal of public confidence began with the subtle inconsistencies between Michael's statements and the forensic timeline, followed by the revelation of his secret life. The polygraph results indicated deception when he was asked about Jennifer, and further investigation uncovered his compulsive access to hundreds of graphic pornography sites on his work computer. This systemic inversion was the key. The life Michael presented was the inversion of his actual internal needs.
Before we go on, a small favor, please subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you, and let's continue with the story.
This hidden activity established a stark dichotomy between the quiet, church-going rule follower presented to the world and the reality of a secretive, isolated man.
Before we go on, a small favor, please subscribe to the channel. It helps a lot. Thank you, and let's continue with the story.
Furthermore, detectives observed that Michael often focused his comments on Jennifer, neglecting to inquire with the same urgency about the fate of his 6-year-old daughter, Abby, a discrepancy that exposed the hierarchy of his true concern. The key insight into the structure of this failure arrived with the realization that Michael's entire persona was a control-based identity, where the illusion of stability was valued above the people within the home. Court records showed that Jennifer had confided in a friend that she felt isolated and controlled, perceiving Michael's religious convictions as having become domineering. When she discovered his secret browsing history, she began considering leaving, threatening the collapse of the carefully constructed facade. Analysts observed that his profile aligned with those who construct an image designed to buffer their inner life from exposure, making the loss of that image intolerable. The homicide was thus understood not as a crime of passion, but as the calculated reassertion of control over a world that was beginning to fracture, confirming the moral or societal implication that some individuals prioritize their self-image over human life. The controlled uncertainty residue in the case is defined by two crucial near-miss moments that nearly sustained the original lie, showcasing a dangerous future vector of criminal luck. A neighbor heard a loud bang around midnight on the night of the murder, but dismissed it as a car backfiring, losing a narrow window for immediate intervention. More critically, the industrial trash compactor at Michael's workplace, where Jennifer's body was later found, had been examined but not fully emptied months earlier due to the volume of compressed waste inside. The body, wrapped in bedding, remained concealed until June 2002, when an employee finally noticed the unusual remains. Had the compactor been emptied sooner, the evidence would have surfaced earlier, but the narrow margin of time allowed the original deception to hold for 6 months. This temporal lag gave the lie a precarious stability, delaying the necessary anomaly of discovery. The full psychological mechanics of the deception were not fully exposed until investigators examined Michael's actions after the fact. His primary concern was not locating the missing persons, but managing the flow of information to deflect scrutiny from his own movements. He would offer helpful but irrelevant details, burying the key facts in an overload of peripheral information, a tactic designed to induce curiosity in false directions. His carefully crafted public statements, recorded and analyzed by behavioral experts, were found to contain numerous instances of displacement and passive language, substituting the names of Jennifer and Abby with detached pronouns like them or the missing. This subtle dehumanization was an internal cognitive shortcut, allowing him to disconnect from the moral gravity of his actions. The individual or institutional error that almost derailed the investigation was the initial focus on outside perpetrators. Because the community was convinced no local person could commit such an act, resources were initially allocated to tracking transient persons and outside threats. This adherence to an emotional expectation, the idea that evil is always an external force, created a delay that was later quantified by the prosecution. This error in judgment created a false partial understanding that Michael exploited by maintaining his image as a victim of random violence. The true environmental constraint was the local psychological landscape, which preferred the narrative of a strange invader over the truth residing within a quiet family home. The successful systemic inversion that sustained Michael's lie for 6 months was the sheer volume and complexity of the landfill. The disposal of the body in the industrial compactor was a calculated risk that relied on institutional scale and routine inefficiency. The garbage was compressed, mixed with waste from countless businesses, and then transported to the landfill. The specific location where Jennifer's body was eventually recovered was due only to the systematic tracking of the waste stream and the use of GPS data from Michael's work truck, linking him forensically to a vast future vector of evidence. This required investigators to engage in a logistical excavation that mirrored the meticulous, controlled nature of the crime itself. The cognitive reward of insight was achieved when the investigators realized Michael's pattern was one of emotional economy. He only used the necessary level of violence and misdirection to achieve his goal, the restoration of his public status. The psychological mechanics behind his selective cooperation showed a man who was negotiating with the investigation, not mourning with it. He provided just enough information to appear helpful, but never enough to establish a complete timeline or a clear path to the truth. His constant reference to external factors, the open door, the missing wallet, the idea of an abduction, were verbal distractions designed to occupy the investigative mind and pull focus from the internal motive. This pattern, once decoded, provides the partial understanding that the motivation for these crimes is often structural preservation, not simple rage. The individual or institutional error of the initial Blagg trial, which was later corrected, was a procedural stumble that provided a second opportunity to dissect the evidence. The retrial in 2018 acted as a powerful stress test for the original evidence, confirming its integrity. The prosecution had to prove the same sequence of events to a new jury, demonstrating that the facts themselves were undeniable, regardless of the years that passed or the legal technicality that intervened. The anomaly of the overturned verdict was ultimately corrected by the undeniable pattern embedded in the forensic record.